Hello, welcome to Everyday Storytelling. How are you doing today?
Yay!
We are going to be reading the Bible.
Yay!
And we are going to be reading the song, as you saw in the title.
Dragon Singer.
Dragon Singer, not Dragon Song. And then Kim's going to spend the next.
All right. So I've got some issues with my computer real fast, but I should be able to take care of this really quickly, I hope. And otherwise, I'm going to just start reading. Oh, perfect. Okay, it's gone. Okay, good. All right, so I see two people here. Thank you for being here. Okay, we are going to get started with, this is Daniel chapter 5. This is the English Standard Version of the Bible. Yes, okay, I'll just get started. King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in front of the 1,000. Belshazzar, when he tasted the wine, commanded that the vessels of gold and of silver that Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem be brought, that the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. Then they brought in the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Immediately, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand, and the king saw the hand as it wrote. Then the king's color changed, and his thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. The king called loudly to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers. The king declared to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and shows me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or make known to the king the interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and his color changed, and his lords were perplexed. The queen, because of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banqueting hall, and the queen declared, "O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts alarm you or your color change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and astrologers, because an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation." Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, "You are that Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, whom the king my father brought from Judah. I have heard of you that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me to read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they could not show me the interpretation of the matter. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now, if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, let your gifts be for yourself and give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father kingship and greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would, he killed, and whom he would, he kept alive. Whom he would, he raised up, and whom he would, he humbled. When his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened, so that he dealt proudly, he was brought down from his kingly throne, and his glory was taken from him. He was driven from among the children of mankind, and his mind was made like that of a beast, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. He was fed grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High God rules the kingdom of mankind and sets over it whom he will. And you, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this. But you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven, and the vessels of his house have been brought in before you, and you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have drunk wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or know, but the God in whose hand is your breath, and whose are all your ways, you have not honored. Then from his presence the hand was sent, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed: Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed with purple, a chain of gold was put around his neck, and a proclamation was made about him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. That is the end of Daniel chapter 5. We will have to find out what happens with Daniel and King Darius tomorrow when we read Daniel chapter 6. And are we continuing on? We've got Dragon Singer coming up. And I see two people and only one person has said that you're here. So, oh wait, no. Oh, Granny Bear's watching too. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Hey. It's a bit far away.
Is that too far?
It's too far. Closer.
Whining.
That's too close. No, that's too far. Okay, stop. No. Okay, that's good. Like, that's perfect. All right, guys. Okay. So I've got a bit of a headache, and we're only going to read one chapter today because it's very long. But I am excited to continue this story because this is really when it starts to get good. It's when Mentally really starts to understand her worth. and to really come into her own as a person and as an adolescent and then a young adult. My phone is on my bed. Plug it in. Plug it in. Plug it in. Sorry. Okay. All right. So I have my handy little assistant here. Come here. Say hi. He never leaves me. All right. Chapter 1. The little queen, all golden, flew hissing at the sea. To stop each wave, her clutch to save, she ventured bravely. As she attacked the sea in rage, a holder man came nigh, along the sand, fishnet in hand, and saw the queen mid-sky. He stared at her in wonder, for often he'd been told that such as she could never be, who hovered there bright gold. He saw her plight, and quickly he looked up the cliff he faced, and saw a cave above the wave, in which her eggs he placed. The little queen, all golden, upon his shoulder stood. Her eyes all blue glowed of her true, undying gratitude. When Menelly, daughter of Yanis Seaholder, arrived at the Harpercraft Hall, she came in style, abroad a bronze dragon. She was seated on Monmar's neck between his rider, Tegelen, and the master harper of Pern, Robinton. For one who had been told that girls could not become harpers, who had run away and actually lived holdless because she could not continue life without music, this was something of a triumphal success. Yet it was also frightening. To be sure, music would not be denied her at the Harper Hall. True, she had written some songs that the master harper had heard and liked, but they were just tunings, not anything important. And what could a girl, even one who had taught her Hold's youngsters their teaching songs and ballads, do at a Harper Hall from which all teaching songs originated? Especially a girl who had inadvertently impressed 9 fire lizards when everyone else on Pern would give a left arm to own just one. What had Master Robinson in mind for her to do here at the Harper Hall? She couldn't think. She was so tired. She'd had a busy, exciting day at Bendon Weir on the opposite side of the continent, where night now was well advanced. Here in Fort Hold, the sky was just darkening. Just a few minutes more, said Robinson in her ear. She heard him laugh because just then Bronze Monarch trumpeted a greeting to the Fort Hold watch dragon. Hang on, Menelly. I know you must be exhausted. I'll put you in Sylvina's care the moment we land. See there? And she followed the line of his pointing finger and saw the lighted quadrangle of buildings at the foot of the Fort Hold cliff. That's the Harper Hall. She shivered then with fatigue and the cold of their passage between and apprehension. Monarch was circling now, and figures were pointing out of the Harper Hall into the courtyard, waving wildly to cheer on the Master Harper's return. Somehow, Menelly hadn't expected that there'd be so many people in the Harpercraft Hall. They kept well back, though their shouts of welcome didn't abate, while the big bronze dragon settled in the courtyard, giving him plenty of wing room. I've got 2 fire lizard eggs, shouted Master Robinson. Hugging the earthen pots tightly against his body, he slid from Bronze Monmar's shoulders with the ease of considerable practice in dismounting dragons. 2 fire lizard eggs, he repeated joyfully, holding the precious egg pots above his head and striding quickly to show off his prizes. My fire lizards, anxiously. My fire lizards. I'm sorry, guys, I'm off. I almost sneezed and it went away, so it's going to come back. Okay, my fire lizards. Anxiously, Menelly glanced up and about her. Did they follow us to Gellin? They're not lost between. No chance of that, Menelly, Tegelen replied, pointing to the slated roof behind them. I asked Monarch to tell them to perch there for the time being. With infinite relief, Menelly saw the unmistakable outlines of her fire lizards on the rooftop against the darkening sky. If only they don't misbehave as they did at Bendon. They won't, Tegelen assured her easily. You'll see to that. You've done more with your fare of fire lizards than Fënor has with his one little queen, and Fënor's a trained dragon rider. He swung his right leg over Monarch's neck ridge and dropped to the ground, raising his arms to her. Bring your leg over. I'll steady you so you won't jar those store feet of yours. And his hands braced her as she slid down Monarch's shoulders. That's the girl, and here you are, safe and sound in the Harper Hall. He gestured broadly, as if only he could have accomplished this mission. Menelly looked across the courtyard where the Master Harper's tall figure and presence dominated those surrounding him. Was Sylvina one of them? Wearily, Menelly hoped that the Harper would find her quickly. The girl could not. Sorry. The girl could put no reliance on Tigellin's glib assumption that her fire lizards would behave. They'd only just got used to being at Bend and Weir among people who had some experience with winged antics. Don't worry so, Menelly. Just remember, said Tigellin, gripping her shoulder in awkward reassurance. Every Harper on Pern has been trying to find Petrion's lost apprentice. Because they thought that apprentice was a boy. That made no difference to Master Robinson when he asked you to come here. Times are changing mentally, and it'll make no difference to the others. You'll see. In a 7 day, you'll have forgotten you ever lived anywhere else. The Bronze Dragon Rider chuckled. Great shells, girl. You've lived holdless, outrun Thread, and impressed 9 fire lizards. What's to fear from Harpers? Where is Sylvina? The Master Harper's voice rose above the others. There was a momentary lull, and someone was sent to the hall to find the woman. And no more answers now. You've the bones of the news. I'll flesh it out for you later. Now, don't drop those egg pots. Sibel, right now. I've more good news. I've found Petrion's lost apprentice. Amid exclamations of surprise, Robinson broke free of the crowd and beckoned to Gellin to bring Menelly forward. For a brief second, Menelly fought the urge to turn and run, impossible as it was for her feet, barely healed from trying to outrun Thread, and with Tigellin's arm about her. His fingers squeezed on her shoulder as if he sensed her nervousness. Second. There's nothing for you to fear from Harper's, he repeated in her ear as he escorted her across the court. Robinson met them halfway, beaming with pleasure as he took her right hand. He flung up his other arm to command silence. This is Menelly, daughter of Yana Seaholder, late of Half Circle Seahold, and Petrion's lost apprentice. Whatever response the Harpers made was covered by an explosion of fire lizard cries from the rooftop. Fearful that the fair might wing down on the Harpers, Menelly turned, saw that their wings were indeed spread, and sternly commanded them to stay where they were. Then she had no excuse for not confronting the sea of faces, some smiling, some with mouths ajar in surprise at her fire lizards, but too many people. Yes, and those fire lizards are Menelly's, Robinson went on, his voice easily projecting above the murmurs, just as that lovely song about the fire lizard queen is Menelly's. Only it wasn't a man who saved the clutch from the sea, it was Menelly. And when no one would let her play or sing in Half Circle Seahold after Petrion died, she ran away to the fire lizard queen's cave and impressed 9 of the eggs before she realized what she was doing. Furthermore, and he raised his volume above the ragged cheers of approval, furthermore, she found another clutch, which provided me with 2 eggs. The second cheer was more wholehearted, reverberating in the courtyard and answered by shrill whistles from the fire lizards. Under cover of good-natured laughter at that response, Tigellin muttered, I told you so, in her ear. And where is Sylvina? Asked the Harper again, a note of impatience audible. Here I am, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself, Robinson, said a woman, pushing through the ring of Harpers. Menelly had an impression of a very white skin and large expressive eyes set in a broad-cheeked face framed by dark hair. Then strong but gentle hands took her from Robinson's grasp. Subjecting the child to such an ordeal. No, you lot calm down. All this noise, and those poor creatures up there too scared out of their wits to come down. Haven't you any sense, Robinson? Away, the lot of you, into the hall. Carry on all night there if you've the energy, but I'm putting this child to bed. Tigellin, if you told me, oh, please just help. As she unbraided everyone impartially, the woman was also making her way with Menelly and Tigellin through the crowd, which parted respectfully but humorously before her. It's too late to put her with the other girls at Dunca's, said Sylvina and to Tigellin. We just bed her in one of the guest rooms for the night. Unable to see clearly in the shadows of the hall, Menelly barked her toes on the stone steps, cried out involuntarily at the pain, and grabbed at the supporting hands. What happened, child? Asked Sylvina, her voice kind and anxious. My toes, my feet. Menelly choked back tears the unexpected pain had brought to her eyes. Sylvina mustn't think her a coward. Here, I'll carry her, said Tegelen, and swung mentally up into his arms before she could protest. Just lead the way, Sylvina. That dratted Robinson, Sylvina said, he can go all day and night without sleep, but forgets that others. No, it's not his fault. He's done so much for me, Menelly began. Ha! He's deeply in your debt, Menelly, said the dragon rider with a cryptic laugh. You'll have to have you'll have to have your healer see to that feat. Sylvina, Tegelen continued as he carried Menelly up the broad flight of stairs that led from the main entrance of the hall. That's how we found her. She was trying to outrun the leading edge of Threadfall. She was? Sylvina stared over her shoulder at Menelly, her green eyes wide with respectful astonishment. She nearly did too, ran her feet raw. One of my wingmen saw her and brought her back to Bend and Weir. In this room, Tegelen, the bed's on the left-hand side. I'll just open the glow baskets. I see it, and Tegelen deposited her gently in the bed. I'll get the shutters, Sylvina, and let those fire lizards of hers in here before they do get into trouble. Menelly had let herself sink into the thick mattress of sweet rushes. Now she loosened the thong holding the small bundle of belongings to her back, but she hadn't the energy to reach for the sleeping fur folded at the foot of the bedstead. As soon as Tegelen had the second shutter open, he called her friends in. I've heard so much about the fire lizards, Sylvina was saying, and only had the glimpse of Lord Grog's little queen that. Gracious goodness! At Sylvina's startled remark, Menelly shrugged out of the thick mattress to see the fire lizards dipping and wheeling about the woman. How many did you say you have, Menelly? There are only 9, replied Tegelen, laughing at Sylvina's confusion. She was twisting about, trying to get a good look at one or another of the gyrating creatures. Menelly told them to settle down quickly and behave. Rocky and Diver landed on the table near the wall, while the more daring Beauty took up her accustomed perch on Menelly's shoulder. The others came to rest on the window ledges, their jeweled eyes whirling with orange and uncertainty, and orange with the orange of uncertainty and suspicion. Why, they're the loveliest creatures I've ever seen, said Sylvina, peering intently into the two bronzes on the table. Rocky chirped back, recognizing that remarks were being made about him. He flipped his wings neatly to his back and cocked his head at Sylvina. And a good evening to you, young bronze fire lizard. That bold fellow is Rocky, said Tegelen, if I remember correctly, and the other bronze is Diver, right, Menelly? She nodded, relieved in her weariness that Tegelen was ready to speak for her. The Greens are aunties 1 and 2, and the pair began to chatter like little old women that Sylvina laughed. The little blue is uncle, but I haven't got the 3 browns sorted out. And now he turned inquiringly to Menelly. They're Lazybones, Mimic, and Brownie, Menelly said, pointing at each in turn. And this is Beauty, Sylvina. Menelly spoke the woman's name shyly because she didn't know her title or rank in the Harper Hall. And a beauty she is too, just like a miniature dragon queen, and just as proud, I see. Then Sylvina gave Menelly a hopeful look. By any chance, will one of Robinton's eggs hatch a queen? I hope so, I really do, said Menelly fervently. But it's not easy with fire lizard eggs to tell which is the queen. I'm sure he'll be just as thrilled, no matter what the color. And speaking of queens, Tegelen, and Sylvina turned to the dragon rider, do please tell me, little did Breck re-impress the new queen dragon at your hatching today? We've been so worried about her here since her queen was killed. No, Breck didn't re-impress, and Tegelen smiled quickly to reassure Sylvina. Her fire lizard wouldn't let her. No? Yes, you should have seen it, Sylvina. The little bronze midget flew at the queen dragon, scolding her like a weary hen. Wouldn't let Breck near the new queen, but she snapped out of that depression, and she'll be all right now, Fenor says. And it was little Bird who pulled the trick. Well, that really is interesting. Sylvina regarded the 2 bronzes with thoughtful respect. So they're a full set of wits. They seem to, Tegelen went on. Fenor uses his little queen Grawl to send messages to the other dragon weirs, of course, and Tegelen clucked disparagingly. She doesn't always return as promptly as she goes. Menelly's trained hers better, you'll see. The dragon rider had been edging towards the door and now gave a huge yawn. Sorry. I'm the one who should apologize, replied Sylvina, indulging my curiosity when you 2 are all but asleep. Get along with you now, Tegelen, and my thanks for your help with Menelly. Good luck now, Menelly. I know you'll sleep well, said Tegelen with a jaunty wink of farewell. He was out of the door, his boot heels clicking on the stone floor before she could thank him. Now, let's just have a quick look at these feet you ran ragged. Sylvina gently tugged off Menelie's slippers. They're all but healed. Menora's clever with her nursing, but we'll have Master Oldive look at you tomorrow. Now, what's this? My things. I don't have much. Here, you two watch that and keep out of mischief, Sylvina said, putting the bundle on the table between Rocky and Diver. Now, slip off your skirt, Menelie, and settle down. A good long sleep, that's what you need. Your eyes are burned holes in your head. I'm all right, really. To be sure you are, now you're here, living in a cave. Did Tagellen say? With every harper on Pern looking for you in holds and craft halls. Slovina deftly tugged at skirt tapes. It's just like old Petrian to forget to mention you being a girl. I don't think he forgot, Menelie said slowly, thinking of her father and mother and their opposition to her playing. He told me the girls can't be harpers. Sylvina gave her a long, hard look. Maybe under another Master Harper, or in the old days, but surely old Petrian knew his own son well enough to. Petrian was Master Harper Robinson's father? Did he never tell you that? Sylvina paused as she was spreading the sleeping fur over Menelie. The old stubborn fool, determined not to advance himself because his son was elected Master Harper, and then picking a place halfway to nowhere. I beg your pardon, Menelie. Half Circle Seahold is halfway to nowhere. Not if Petrion found you there, said Sylvina, recovering her brisk tone, and sponsored you to this craft. Now that's enough talking, she added, closing the glow basket. I'll leave the shutters open, but you sleep yourself out. Do you hear me? Menelie mumbled a reply, her eyelids closing despite her effort to remain politely awake when Sylvina was in the room. She let out a soft sigh as the door banged softly shut. Menelie immediately curled up by Duty immediately curled up by Menelie's ear, and the girl felt other small hard bodies making themselves comfortable against her. Chrissy's here. I'll just rest my book on you. That sounds good. Okay. Da 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 da. Ah. She composed herself for sleep, aware now of the dull throbbing of her feet and the aching of her bandaged toes. She was warm, she was comfortable, she was so tired. The bag that enclosed the thick rushes was stout enough to keep stray edges from digging into her flesh, but she couldn't sleep. She also couldn't move because while her mind turned over all the day's incredible events, her body wasn't hers to command, but in some nether region of unresponsiveness. She was conscious of the spicy odor of beauty, of the dry, sweet scent of the rushes, the earthy smell of wet fields borne in by the night wind, accented occasionally by the touch of acrid blackstone smoke. Spring was not advanced enough to dispense with evening fires. Strange not to have the smell of sea in her nostrils, Menelie thought. The sea and fish odors had dominated all but the last 7 days of her 15 turns. How pleasant to realize that she had done with the sea and fish forever. She'd never have to gut another packtail in her life or risk another infected cut. She couldn't use her injured hand as much as she wanted to yet, but she would. Nothing was impossible, not if she could get to the Harper Hall in spite of all the odds against it. And she'd play guitar again and harp. Menora had assured her she'd used the fingers properly in time, and her feet were healing. It amused Menelie now to think that she'd had the temerity to try to outrun the leading edge of threadfall. Running had done more than save her skin from thread scoring, it had brought her to bend and rear, to the attention of the Master Harper of Pern, and to the start of a completely new life. And her dear old friend Petrian had been Master Robinson's father. She'd known the old harper had been a good musician, but it had never occurred to her before to wonder why he had been sent to Half Circle Seahold, where only she had profited from his ability as a teacher. If only her father Janus had let her play guitar when the new harper first arrived. But they'd been so afraid that she disgraced the Seahold. Well, she hadn't, and she wouldn't. One day her father, and yes, her mother too, would realize that Menelie was no disgrace to the hold of her birth. mentally drifted on thoughts of triumph until sound invaded her reflections. Male voices, laughing and rumbling in conversation, carried on the clear night air. The voices of harpers, tenor, bass, and baritone, in amused, argumentative, cajoling tones, and one querulous sort of quaver, older, whiny voice. She didn't like that one. Another, a soft velvet, light baritone, rose above the cranky tenor, soothing. Then the master harper's deep baritone dominated and silenced the others. Though she couldn't understand what he was saying, his voice lulled her to sleep. And that is the end of chapter 1. And it is 9:02, so we did kind of, we kind of stopped a little bit early, but we will try to read chapter 2 tomorrow and maybe chapter 3 as well. In the meantime, somebody has to be up early for school. And I will bid you guys all good night. I've got to go brush Chrissy. She's a mess. She had a bath yesterday and decided that it was appropriate to roll in the mud right afterwards. Kimi gave her a bath yesterday. Ow, you stepped on my foot. David. Oh, he's asleep. Did you want to say anything else? Okay, good night, everybody.